I've had my Appaloosa for about a year and decided that I wanted to make a couple of changes. I ordered a Dynamo wheel and light from Rivendell and had one built up by Rich Lesnick. It's a Velocity Cliffhanger with a Sun Dynamo hub in a polished finish. So I got my old tire off and installed on the new wheel. And I got that on the bike. I also got a Nito Marks rack. I believe this is model M1. And I ran the front struts long down to the eyelets on the fork and got that mocked up. And for the shorter struts, I used a sliding bevel to mock up the bend around the cantilever brakes. And I got the tombstone attachment tightened up to the fork crown. And then transferred my bend marks from the bevel to the struts. Wrapped those in a towel and clamped them in my vise. And I used the bevel here as a guide for my bend. Once I had it bent, I checked it against the bevel. It looked pretty good. And I got that installed to make sure that it cleared the brake. It worked out fine. So seeing that that looked good, I took the other strut and clamped it in next to the one I'd already bent and bent it to match. And they came out looking functionally identical. So I got that one installed as well. And then I marked where I wanted to trim the struts. Cut them with the coping saw, and then filed the cuts down with a mill bastard file. Then I started to wire up my lamp. This is a Schmidt Edelux II. Got the heat shrink housing shrunken up with the heat gun. Got my clamps on and clamped. This isn't the perfect tool, but I just barely got the job done. I did trim the overall length of the wire. I might regret that in a couple years down the road, but for now it's been working out just fine. I wrapped this around the front strut and finished it off with two clear zip ties. Here I am connecting the wire to the hub and putting one of the zip ties on. I've been really impressed with this Dynamo light. It puts every LED I've ever used entirely to shame. The beam is very wide and very long. Works great. I wanted to do a handlebar swap, but first I needed to talk to an orthopedic specialist to see about a prescription.
Dr. Romance, thanks for making time. Thanks for making an appointment for me.
Oh, no problem, Eric. I'm glad I could be here for you in your time of need.
So I've got this Joe Appaloosa. I've got these Billy bars installed, and they're wide, but I worry that they're not wide enough. I'm worried that I've got minimal leverage and that I haven't optimized my comfort. And I'm also experiencing a bit of interference between the bar end shifters, the levers, and my thighs, often when I'm out of the saddle.
Well, bar end shifters, without even looking at your chart. I'm just off the cuff here. I learned this in Harvard. First off, what length is your stem? I'm actually looking at your chart. It's a 110, isn't it? And using a 110 stem with swept back bars when you're above average height, at the very least, I would go to a 130. Before I write you the prescription for my orthopedic back bars, I want to make sure that you're running at least a 130 on there. That's going to help you quite a bit. Short stems are very in vogue right now. And for the right reasons. A lot of the top tubes on modern bikes are a lot longer than they once were. Geometry is a bit different, but with swept back bars, everything is different. You got to have a long stem. It's really the only place other than the Pro Peloton where the 130 stem reigns supreme. So that's where I would start. Now, after that, I don't recommend, especially for off-roading, I would never recommend bar end shifters on swept back bars. On drop bars, it's one thing, they're not coming back at you quite as much. I don't like to have my upright bars actually upright. I like to lean into them a little bit so to make sure that I have some weight on the front tire. Upright, being completely upright works great on the beach bike path or something, but that's not, that's a look we're trying to get away from. We want people to take us seriously, and you got to have a little bit of performance in your bike. It's very anti-Rivendell, I understand, but you could really make those bikes ride nice if you get a little bit of weight on the front tire, contrary to what most people think about setting up a Rivendell. I just took another look at the Billy bar. Wow, that one really sweeps back. With your 110 stem with that handlebar, you're really doing some damage to your inner thighs. Your back health is likely doing just fine, and you're well supported in the lumbar region and well supported by your friends and family. So, those are two great things to have going in your favor right now.
I got my prescription in the mail from Dr. Romance and picked up a set of these orthopedic back bars from Crust Bikes. Here they are overlaid with the Billy bars. They're wider and they sweep back more. Here are the components I used for a temporary ortho bar setup. And I decided to leave the existing components installed on the Billy bars in case I wanted to swap them back. So I got ready for my bar swap and pulled my Rene Joe pouch and the brake hanger up front. And the brakes out back. I also decided to swap the front and rear mech, which work fine, but are not quite to my liking as far as aesthetics. They're both Deore, and the front mech has a wild and serpentine cable routing. We got the bars uninstalled, and as I mentioned, I left them aside just like this. Here is my filthy, greasy, grody chain. This is the first time I have removed the chain to clean it. So I wound it up nice and tight, nice and tidy. And I put it in a bath of mineral spirits. I find this works pretty well to remove grease and dirt from a chain. A couple hours soak and then a thorough wipe with a clean rag. So here's that Deore rear mech coming off, and this is an XTR M951 rapid rise mid-cage derailleur, which I thought would be pretty groovy, but the cage was bent, so I couldn't use it. And here I'm removing this massive Deore front mech. And here are the old and new mechs side by side. This is the Deore, massive, bulky, heavy, strange. And this is a Shimano 600 EX Arabesque. Svelte, beautiful, simple. I got that installed, and I was limited with how low I could get this by the bottle boss there. It looks a little high, but it works fine. Shifts fine. And here's the stem. This is a 26 millimeter diameter clamp, 120 millimeter stem, and here come the ortho bars. .69 centimeters end to end. Got them pitched down a bit, snugged up the bolt. These are Suntour Power Thumb shifters and Diacomp SS6 brake levers. It takes a little finesse and adjustment to figure out exactly how to get these set up together. Made sure that the levers were set the same distance from the ends of the bars. And I got the other shifter mounted. And I put a nickel at the bottom of each of these Oury rubber grips. I used some hand sanitizer as a lubricant. Smeared that on. Getting these on can be quite difficult. It would have been better to have a second person to hold the handlebars and the bike still. Takes a lot of torquing and tweaking. I used an air compressor too. And then did the same on the other side. And I got my chain out. Wipe this down. Cleaned up nice enough. And the mech that's currently installed is an XTR M952, the long cage. This thing works great, but with the paint color and the rest of the bike, I didn't really like that XTR gray finish. I got my cable housing installed, and I made a cable tie out of a piece of copper wire. I started running my shifter cables. I love these Suntour Power Thumb shifters. They're a pleasure to use. I love the way they look. They're great. They're the one big revelation of this bar swap, is that I love these thumb shifters. These Diacomp levers work great. They're cheap. I don't much care for the way they look. Got the brakes wired back up. And trimmed the hanger cable. And I decided to do a crazy thing, which was to take these clear anodized dull finish Paul brakes, remove them from the bike, and polish them. First, I sprayed them all with simple green and took them into the house and washed them in the kitchen sink with a toothbrush to remove all the dirt and grease. And then I mixed up some de-anodizing solution. Working with chemicals, I like to ventilate whenever I can. I also wear safety glasses and a respirator. I'm not a chemist, but I just don't know what's in this stuff, so I play it very cautiously. This is the de-anodizing solution I used. It's from a company called Jest Co. I'll put a link in the description. And you mix about a tablespoon per quart of water. I used hot top water. That was about 120 degrees. Stirred that together till it dissolved. And then I submerged my parts. They soaked for about 15 or 20 minutes. This looks very dark gray. That is indeed a dull silver break. And there you can see the anodizing just kind of rubs off. And the bubbles are how you know it's working. So after about 20 minutes, I pulled everything out and wiped it dry. I wiped off the excess anodizing. Got a Q-tip in there. And I pulled out my bench grinder with a buffing wheel and clamped it to the bench. And using a white buffing compound on the wheel, I started to polish up the parts. Definitely use safety glasses and a respirator here for flying metal particles and fine particulate. These polished up pretty well. I'll be eager to see how they hold up over time, but for now, they are silver and they are shiny. So I got the old diacomps off there. Happy with these bars. Decided to pull them off the billies. So these are Paul Canti Levers. And then I got to have my second excursion in installing these Oury grips. Here's a look at the brakes, and you can also see that Nito rack. The rear brakes as well. I found a Nehave Shimano Rapid Rise derailleur with a long cage on eBay, and I got this thing for an insane deal. It was $17. I love how silver and shiny it is. It's massive, and it seemed more appropriate to me for the bike than this dark gray XTR. So I pulled the XTR. And I installed my first Rapid Rise rear derailleur. Got the limit screws adjusted. And I got the chain threaded in. This is a little tricky with the Rapid Rise. Rapid Rise, some of them call for a shorter piece of housing in the back. They've got this pivoting cable routing pulley deal going on. Got that cinched in and trimmed. And I'm using one of the Nissan brass cable housing ferrules from Simworks. Not a great demonstration here, but this mech works great. I love it so far. And this sticker appealed to me a bit because it just screams mid-90s. I really liked it a lot, but I decided it would look best without it. So here is the bike as it is now. New front derailleur, new rear derailleur. New rack, new front wheel, new Dynamo light. I've also got a vintage Suntour seat clamp on there. New bars, same old levers, and the new lovely Suntour Power Thumb shifters. I really enjoy this bike, and it's been fun to ride and work on.